Hi everyone, I'm Dwayne. Thanks for tuning in. I've been playing guitar for about 20 years now, give or take. It might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less. And I guess I've always been the kind of guitarist that just kind of got in there and just kind of figured things out. I've never been a regimented guitarist that's rooted in fundamentals or really understanding the deeper parts of playing guitar. I've always been the kind of person that heard a song from the very beginning and then just wanted to learn it. So obviously, like a lot of self-taught guitarists, I learned to read guitar tabs. I didn't get any guitar lessons, so I didn't really learn any of the fundamentals of different chord shapes and keys and all that other stuff. Like, I know the basics of playing chords, and I can pretty much, I can play all the ones at the top of the fretboard. But I've never been the type of guitarist that I guess could play in a particular key. So if I was jamming with a band, like, okay, they're jamming in the key of C, the only thing that I would not be able to tell you is that the number one is the C, right? Because it's the key of C, so it starts on C. But I wouldn't know what the chord progressions are for playing in that particular key because I'm not rooted in fundamentals. Now, I've been playing long enough that if someone told me, gave me enough time and said, okay, we're going to be jamming in the key of C, I could go and look up, what those particular chords are in the key of C, and I could figure it out if I had enough time. But put on the spot, that's not committed to my memory. I haven't memorized all the different keys and shapes of those keys. I could play a C chord on the guitar, but I couldn't tell you beyond playing C up here on the top of the guitar, where C is further up the neck. And I do know that the chords go up the neck, and I do know there's different variations of C. You've got your suspended chords and all those other little variations that kind of veer into the music nerd territory that I never embarked on. So today I want to talk about overcoming the fear of playing live, especially in an environment where you may not be very experienced as a guitarist or kind of feel like you're on the same level as other people. In the context of this discussion today, we're going to be talking about worship music, but I think this kind of extends to pretty much playing guitar live with another band or other artists and stuff like that of different skill levels. Because as I said, if you're like me, you don't really know the music theory, you don't know all the chord shapes, you wouldn't know how to play a suspended chord, like a B suspended chord or something. And you've never really kind of felt the need to do that stuff because in your mind, a B chord is good enough. And, there's no right or wrong way to kind of do things, especially in a worship setting, because, it may appear that they strive for perfection in those environments, but it's actually, it's really, it's the higher purpose. It's for a higher purpose. It's not for the congregation. You're not playing for the congregation. You're playing with the congregation and everyone's worshiping. But in that setting, it's kind of easy to lose sight of the fact that, you're playing for a higher purpose. So when I was asked to play at my church in the worship team, I'm going to be honest with you, panic set in immediately. I felt my hands getting clammy. My mind started flooding with thoughts of, I'm not good enough. I don't know the Nashville Number System that they use. I don't know how to play in different keys. I don't know suspended chords. I don't know a lot of that music theory stuff that it appears that they use in worship setting. And despite that fear, something pushed me to say yes. Because honestly, I got to this point in my thought process where I was like, when would I ever feel ready? I'm always going to find an excuse to say no. I'm always going to find a way to put myself down and say, I'm not at their level. I'm never going to be able to play up on the stage. Everyone's just going to laugh at me. I'm going to go there and everyone's going to be like, what's this guy doing here? He's wasting our time. So the biggest hurdle for playing isn't technique. I've kind of started to learn. It's not the fact that you don't know suspended chords or other sort of stuff, because with guitar, there's shortcuts you can take that kind of sounds nice. So like, for example, if you're playing like a suspended, if the sheet calls for a suspended B chord, I would actually just play a B chord. Now, it may not have the same sort of aspects of a suspended B chord, but it's a B chord nonetheless. And I think in those instances, it's okay when you're in a mix with other artists to kind of leave out little bits like that. You don't have to play everything sort of chord for chord, note for note, because with guitar, there's a lot of cheat ways that you can actually cheat chords as well. So for example, if you want to play like an F sharp, I wouldn't know how to play an F sharp beyond playing it with that sort of power chord shape there. Same thing with like a G sharp. I wouldn't know how to do that. And then obviously you can play a C chord as a power chord as well. Or you can play it as a chord. Now you can hear that there is a difference, right? Like, the power chord's a little bit more aggressive, it's a little bit more basic, but it's a C chord nonetheless. So if you're playing in a worship setting, or any setting, I should add, and you're like, oh, I don't remember what C is, but I know how to play power chords, you could just do it on the 3 there, right? And it's still a C chord. So I think it's those little things that you can kind of like, you can kind of learn to kind of hack your way around. I do think it's good to eventually learn basic chords if you're kind of at the point where you feel like you don't know some of those particular chords like C's and D's and all that kind of stuff. But once you start getting into suspendeds and all the other sort of chords where you're noticing the weird little numbers like the 7s and the 4s added on there, if you don't know that, if you don't know what, you know, an E minor 4 is or whatever, you can just play an E minor. If you don't know what an E whatever number is, you can just play an E chord. You can kind of, you can do that stuff and no one's going to call you out on it because it's the same chord at the end of the day. It just lacks some of the nuance maybe. But if you're playing with other artists that do know how to fill that in and they're playing that stuff, it's going to fill out beautifully and complement it. So the biggest hurdle, as I said, I think for myself wasn't the technique. It was my mindset. In my mind, I was thinking before I embarked on this journey that I would have to know all these notes perfectly and all these chords perfectly and play them as they're written. And I guess the fear of being exposed as a fraud was real because when you tell people you've been playing guitar for 20 years, they assume that you're some be-all, know-all genius on the guitar that knows everything, you know, every chord, you know how to, you know, play C all the way up to the 24th fret on your guitar. When, you know, I quickly realized that this fear was more based on my own insecurities than reality, to be honest. The musicians around me have been nothing but welcoming, supportive, and patient. And, you know, the thing you got to remember is they were beginners too. Like, everyone comes from different sort of backgrounds. Some people grew up learning the fundamentals. Some people grew up, like myself, learning from guitar tabs and by ear. Some people kind of waited later in life to learn how to play guitar as well and shied away from this stuff. And I think it's a maturity thing for myself that I'm getting to this point now where I feel like I'm interested in learning some of those more fundamental aspects of guitar. But I think there's very much there's very much this grace where you can kind of learn on the job. So for example, I don't fully grasp the Nashville Number System. I've got some stuff where I want to learn the Nashville Number System, but it goes from like 1 all the way up to like 1, 2M, 3M or whatever it is, all the way up to 7. And each of those numbers corresponds in that particular key to a chord. So if you're playing in the key of B, the Nashville Number System, they might be like, okay, go from the 1 to the 4 to the 5. Now, I still don't know what all that stuff even means. If I look it up, I can obviously kind of see it and play it. And it's one of those things where I would just print out a cheat sheet. And if I knew what the songs, the key of the songs were that day, because the keys all change in worship as well, different vocal ranges. You might have B, you might have A, you might go down to G, for example. And playing the same song in different keys, so the chords all change. So you might learn a song in B. But then if you're playing that in like A and it's going to start a little bit higher, or G, sorry, not A. same. That's obviously playing it in the G with the power chord there. So there's nuances around that stuff where if you're playing the same songs but in different keys as well, having to kind of overcome that muscle memory of, okay, well, I really learned this song in the key of B, but now we're playing in G, and remembering what those different shapes are, which is where those things like Nashville Number System and that kind of get used in like the worship settings, especially because it's easier for the MD to say, okay, go from the 1 to the 4 to the 5. I haven't fully grasped that yet. And, you know, I'm still, as I said, I'm still mixing up chord shapes. Suspended chords are alien to me. In my mindset, I'm trying to get into is that each rehearsal, I'm going to get better. As I learn these songs, by doing them, I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to survive them. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I think growth is always uncomfortable, right? You know, you're not going to learn how to do something right the first time. You know, everyone's a beginner. And in many ways, I feel like I've become a beginner of guitar again. Like, I feel like I'm going back and learning basics that people probably learn in their first and second year of playing guitar. And will I ever get to the point where I could play a C chord all the way up the neck or a G chord or whatever? Probably not. I have kind of learnt ways to do these chords, as I said, like, you know, C, C sharp, D, you know, D sharp, E. It's just one of those things where I've kind of learnt to kind of hack ways around doing things, but I kind of know that there's a ceiling for myself and my learning where it stops being fun. And when it stops being fun, my brain is going to switch off and the information's just not going to flow in like it would if I was like, yeah, this is a challenge, but I'm having fun. And I think having a supportive environment is definitely, it's huge. If you're in an environment where you're being pressured to be perfect and everyone is judging you and criticizing you for not being on time or not playing in the right key and not being, you know, not giving you the space to kind of like get better, I think that's a really toxic environment. And I personally don't think anyone thrives in an environment like that. Here when I was just noodling around there and playing that I was kind of messing up. But I think and that's another thing. When you mess up, just keep going. Just keep going. So when I did my first rehearsal, it wasn't playing on a Sunday. I'm not at the point where I'm playing on Sundays just yet. But the church I have has I go to has this great program where basically they get you ready to get used to the in-ears, the click tracks, the multi-tracks, playing with the other bands, the direction from the MD. So someone telling you what's coming up, telling you to dig in, ring out chords, little kind of feedback notes as you're playing live. It's a program basically designed to get you ready to play on a Sunday. So they don't just say, okay, off you go. We're going to give you 2 weeks to learn the songs. We're doing 5 songs and this one's in the key of G, this one's in A, this is in B, this is in C. It's kind of like a gentle sort of introduction where they kind of give you feedback and you know the things that other people are hearing that you need to improve on, because I think that's another thing. If you were the one that was in charge of your own feedback, you're going to give yourself the worst feedback imaginable. You're going to make it really hard on yourself. And you may think in your head and your in-ears that it sounds terrible. Other people are probably like, that actually sounds really good. Like, other people might be saying, okay, well, you're playing the right chords and whatnot, but, you know, you're just kind of you're not hitting it as hard here, or you're pulling back too much here, or, you know, you're going out of time in this particular part. And you know, in my instance of my first rehearsal, we did a run through of some 2 songs a few times, and the first time I was just completely like out of time. I was forgetting chords and whatnot, but I just kept pushing basically. And then after that, it basically turned out that other people were like, oh yeah, I can't hear the click track in my in-ears. And then it dawned on me, because my first thought was, oh, I'm just playing terrible. Like, this is so embarrassing. And then it dawned on me when someone else said that, oh yeah, I couldn't actually hear the click track when I was playing. So the thing that threw me off the timing wasn't the fact that I was just a terrible player and I was being exposed as a fraud. What was happening was I was actually losing the click in my ears and going out of time because I couldn't hear. So, I was getting lost and falling behind because turns out someone else was doing the same thing. I couldn't hear them through my in-ears. They were playing acoustic and they were kind of turned down, but they were like, I just had to stop halfway through because I lost it completely. So we fixed the click track and then we went back through and did it again. And it was so much better the second run through. Like I still messed up a little bit, but the timing was so much more on point. But it's funny, in that moment, my first criticism was myself. I never once stopped to think, okay, maybe something else is contributing to this. And it was the lack of click, but my mind just didn't want to, I guess, go and immediately say, okay, well, maybe something else is causing you to mess up here. My mind was just kind of like, no, you're terrible, Dwayne. Like, this is garbage. Why did you even show up tonight, sort of thing. Here's some tips that I've kind of learned and I'm still learning to embrace because, it's funny, you wouldn't take diet advice from a fat person, right? Like someone with an unhealthy lifestyle giving you advice, and people love to give advice, but here's some things that I guess have kind of helped me or are helping me because I'm still learning to kind of get through this. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of all the tips that people can give you, it's a confidence thing at the end of the day. So the number one thing I would say is say yes before you feel ready. Confidence is going to come through action, not before it. You're always going to find an excuse as to why you're not ready. You're always going to come up with some reason why you're not good enough to play with other people, why other people are going to kind of judge you and think you're terrible, when really the only person that's really judging you is yourself. And don't worry, like the other people that you think have it all together and know the songs and the chord shapes and stuff, they're judging themselves too. Like, I don't think anyone is ever immune from self-criticism, regardless of how confident you get. There's always going to be some days where people are going to be like, oh man, I was just off tonight. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. So number two is lean on your bandmates. They're there for support. They're not there to judge you. They want you to feel comfortable. They want you to have fun. They want you to kind of create a good environment as well. And if you're being negative to yourself and conveying that sense of anxiety and whatnot, it's going to rub off on other people around you. So you'll actually find when people doubt themselves and are a bit negative and other people around them, that definitely rubs off on other people. And, no one wants you to feel like that. You don't want anyone else to feel like that. Unless you're the kind of person that likes putting other people down to make yourself feel better, which in case that's a whole other set of issues to deal with there. But your bandmates are there because they want you to kind of have fun and get in the groove with them. And everyone wants to do it, not necessarily for themselves, but, to have fun. And if you're playing praise and worship music, especially, it's not even about you or your bandmates or the congregation. Obviously, it's doing it for a higher purpose. You're worshiping. So people aren't in that headspace where they're thinking about you or looking at you or critiquing you. No one's in the audience watching you play guitar and go, oh, I heard that. He was meant to play a suspended A chord there, but he completely missed it and played a G chord. Like, a lot of people aren't even going to notice in those live settings because most people aren't musicians. You're going to have some musician people there that maybe kind of pick up on little things, but no one's going to hang on to it and say, oh, wow, that was terrible. I can't believe he played that completely wrong chord, or, he missed that note and it just sounded terrible. Because if you're confident in yourself and you mess up, chances are a lot of people are just going to think that you meant to do that. Most people don't even hear when you make mistakes or care when you make mistakes, to be honest. No one's there to judge you. They're not there even for you as well. That's another thing. They're not there to watch you play. They're there to kind of worship. They're there to sing the songs. They're looking in your direction, but the lyrics are behind you. They're looking at the lyrics because a lot of people don't memorize these songs. So in that moment, they're in it. They're thinking of their own circumstances and they're worshiping and praising in their own way, but they're not watching you. They're not there to critique you. It's not a paid performance where people feel like they're coming with an expectation to see you perform in your A game. You're not John Mayer, right? So tip number 3 is simplify when you're overwhelmed or you don't know. You can't nail that suspended chord. You don't know that suspended chord. Just simplify it. So for example, as I was saying really earlier in the video, you don't know how to play a suspended B chord. Well, that's fine. Just play a B. That's it. And chances are, if you're playing in a church setting, you probably know how to play a B chord and, you know, an F sharp and a G sharp and a G, an A, all that stuff. You may not know the suspended stuff, but just look, A. It's not a suspended A chord, but most people aren't going to hear because it's going to be mixed with bass and drums, and there's vocals and there's keyboards and people in the audience are singing. You know, you've got a lot of coverage. You've got more coverage than you think. So if you simplify, sure, you're going to hear it in your in-ears because your mix is loud, and chances are you've got your guitar probably turned up loud if you're playing in that setting with in-ears. But in most settings, most people, they're not going to hear you simplifying the chords. So I think that's a really huge hack that more guitarists need to lean on. Just simplify the chords. Like, you don't have to play suspended chords and all those other sort of chord shapes. Just simplify them, and I promise you that while you can hear the difference, and maybe the MD and the members of the band can hear the difference, they don't care because it's the same key. And really, that's all that matters. Like, if you start playing like a C chord or something when it's meant to be B. Yeah, you can hear the difference, but if you just make that mistake once, instead of like playing like on this particular song, and I start going instead, I'm probably gonna commit to that, and then I'm just gonna pull it together when I go up to the E. So you can hear I just went straight back to the B there, which is what, in that example, I was showing you if I went to the C as a mistake. Most people, they're not going to care. Just own the mistakes and simplify. And tip number 4, I would say, if theory or the Nashville number system intimidates you, slowly learn it. Don't feel like you're obligated to just know all this stuff, because, you know, especially leveraging tip number 3, you can simplify this stuff, and chances are that your congregation is going, and the MD and whatnot that are directing you, if they're used to throwing out numbers for the Nashville number system, and you're upfront about the fact that you don't know what 4 and 5 in the key of B is in Nashville number system, what they're actually going to do is they're going to say the chords for you. So my first rehearsal, I was actually asked if I knew the Nashville number system, and I said no. I was like, I want to learn it, and I will learn it. But I don't know it. So I noticed in that instance, the MD, he was actually learning to MD as well that night. He actually started saying the chords. So he'd be like, okay, go to the, you know, F sharp. And then he'd be like, okay, ring out on the B. And, you know, in his mind, he was probably thinking, okay, well, he would usually default to like 4 and 5 or whatever the numbers are that correspond to that particular thing. I didn't know. He was willing to kind of do that. And it was a small thing where he would just say the names of the chords instead of the numbers. And it's really super helpful because over time I will learn that stuff. And eventually, if we're playing in like a key of B, I'll be like, oh yeah, I've learned the number system for that. So you can just use the numbers for this particular song. Don't worry about the chords. And then over time with practice, I'm going to understand how to do that in the key of C, the key of A. And the good thing about worship music as well, in my situation, is that a lot of the songs are kind of around the key of B, the key of A, and the key of G. And notice at my church with the singers, because it obviously caters to the different pitches and stuff. You know, from what I've seen with some of the stuff, that really I only have to learn like 3 or 4 keys in the Nashville number system to learn it. I don't have to learn everything in every chord. And maybe there might become a time where there might be something where I've learned some of those and okay, we're going to be doing D, and I'll be like, drats, I didn't learn the Nashville number system in D, but I do know it in C, B, and G. And I think as long as you're committed to improving and trying to be the best you can be, I think everyone is going to be super supportive of you, because if you just turn up and you haven't practiced, you haven't even tried, I think that's bad. I think there's a difference between not trying and perfection. And that's the thing, no one expects perfection but yourself. You're always going to be the person that thinks you have to be at this level. But I think especially for worship music, I know I keep using worship music as an example, but that's kind of where my personal perspective and learning journey of playing live is coming from. Worship music is about authenticity, not flawless performance. You're not performing to a paid crowd. They're not there to watch you. As I said, you're not John Mayer. You're not showing up, or you're not a Tim Henson. Everyone's going to be like, I'm going to see some shredding and some sweet picking and clean picking. No one's showing up for you at the end of the day. So every time I practice and I do these training runs and rehearsals and stuff, and I get used to being around my peers and they're supporting me, the fear is just dissipating. So the first time, obviously, I was looking down. I wasn't really moving. I was just kind of really focusing on the click track and the multi-tracks and just trying not to mess up, because in my mind, if I messed up, everyone's going to be like, oh, this guy can't play guitar. Like, we don't want him on our worship team. Things start making more sense once you start getting in your head, because you realize that you actually know a lot more than you think you do. If you've been playing guitar for a long time, even a self-taught guitarist like I am, you've learnt more than you think you have. Even if you're not using that stuff, you'll start doing things and you'll be like, oh, hang on a second. Like, this is clicking for me, or I've played something like this before. Because, guitar variations and whatnot, especially when it comes to chords and stuff, you'll realize that you've done a lot of this kind of music theory stuff, even if you didn't stick with it. At some point, rather or another, you've learnt something that's rooted in music theory, even if it was just down tuning to drop B or drop D and playing Lamb of God sort of riffs. You've learnt a scale or something like that because that song was written in a particular scale. Or if you've learned a blues song, you've probably learnt how to play the pentatonic blues scale in a particular key, like the key of A or something. Just learning a particular song, or how to do a simple thing like a... If you've ever done a simple blues stuff like that, you've learnt how to play sort of like a scale thing and a key related thing, even if you don't think about it in the moment. So I think that's the important thing to remember, is that at the end of the day, no one is expecting you to be 100%. They just want you to come with a positive attitude. They want you to obviously try and make an attempt to practice these songs and practice them as best as you can. If you can get even 80% of a song, that is so much better than just showing up and being like, oh, I'll just figure it out as we play along sort of thing. That's really unprofessional, especially if you're playing in a worship setting, but no one's going to expect you to just like hit everything flawlessly all the time. And no one's going to notice at the end of the day. So yeah, if you're on the fence or you're worried you're not ready to start playing live, just do it. Just do it, right? You'll never regret stepping up. I don't regret stepping up. After I did it, I had such a rush. Even though I wasn't playing to an audience, my first rehearsal, I was like, I just had this buzz about me, and people were giving me nice feedback, and they're like, I loved what you did in that bridge part where you kind of started digging in and made it a little bit more rocky and stuff. And they're like, I was getting into that because I was adding kind of my own little flourishes on there, and the nerves were kind of like making me do different things, but people were responding to them and feeling good about them. And then the feedback at the end, of course, was really positive as well and supportive. And they want you to feel good and have fun. And they don't want you to be a guitar virtuoso. They don't want you to play in every key flawlessly. So don't just do it. Don't think about it. I mean, it's easier said than done. But face the uncertainty and grow through it. That's all you need to do. The journey is going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to get up there and be like, oh, wait, this is nothing, like playing live is easy. No one ever does that. I guarantee that every popular musician that you think that conveys a sense of confidence on the stage, that confidence is just learning to lean into it. And I think a lot of it just comes from muscle memory as well. As you get more comfortable playing those particular songs as well, and you're not having to think about them as much, you'll find it becomes muscle memory, and you're just going to really relax and lean into it. You're playing everything that you need to. You're not overplaying like everything. You're just playing what you have to, and everyone's feeling good. But a lot of stuff is going to become muscle memory when you're playing live, especially with other people. And over time, you're just going to be like, okay, well, I know where B is, and I know where C is, and I know where C sharp is, and I know where F sharp is, and G sharp. I know where G is, and obviously G as well. these things just become second nature, because I'll be honest with you, before I started practicing play with the worship team, I was like freaking out. I was like, I started to doubt myself. I'm like, do I even know what all the chords are? Do I know what an A minor is, an E minor? Do I know what an E chord is? Do I know what a D is, a G? And I did know that stuff, but in that moment, I just started doubting everything that I actually did know, even if I don't actually play that stuff the majority of the time, because as I said, I play a lot of like drop-tuned metal stuff, so I'm not playing chords, even though that drop-tuned metal stuff in drop D or whatever I'm playing in, that is still correlating to a particular chord. Like you could be playing like a D or an A just because you're in a drop tuning, but you're not thinking about it because you're in that tab mindset where you're like, okay, well, it's just 3 and then 5 and then O and then 3 and then 1 O bend. You know, like it's those things where you're finding little systems to play, and I think that's okay. You don't have to be a music theory genius to play with other people. If you're planning on being like a studio or session guitarist, that's a whole different sort of level of guitar playing where you don't have to be perfect, but you do kind of have to know your stuff a little bit. But if you're playing worship or you're playing in a covers band or a wedding band or something, you don't have to be perfect. You can have fun with it. You can use shortcuts, as I was saying, simplify things, but it really does come down to practice at the end of the day, to kind of get you more comfortable and get familiar with the fretboard and stuff. But you don't need to know all these systems, all these guitar courses and stuff, tell you. So you got this, you know. I'm still learning to get this as well. But these are just things that I've learned, and trust me, they are helping me. But yeah, hopefully that helps you too. Thank you very much for watching.